Hello, this is Justin Williams with the Wolfpacker Podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by fellow co-host and editor of the Wolfpacker.com, Matt Carter. And today we are going to talk about the Wolfpack's disappointing first ACC loss of the season, 31-30. The Wolfpack falls to Miami by 1 point in Hard Rock Stadium Saturday night on ESPN2. We will break down the details, how it all happened, our thoughts moving forward with this team, and maybe some things to watch moving forward. But before we dive into the details and analysis of this game, a quick reminder for the listeners at home: you guys have been doing a great job of following these instructions. So please, if you haven't already, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us: Apple, Spotify, Google Play. We're everywhere you listen to podcasts. So wherever you listen to podcasts, find the Wolfpacker Podcast, subscribe to it, download it, enjoy it, love it, listen to it. And also, we're on our YouTube channel, so if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can watch this podcast on our eCam system here. If you want to take a look at our pretty faces while we talk about Wolfpack sports, head over to the YouTube channel, the Wolfpacker YouTube channel, and subscribe and give this video a thumbs up and comment while you're at it. All right, Matt, so I got a lot of thoughts about this game. This was actually, if you weren't a fan of either of these two teams, this was actually a pretty darn good football game last night. 31-30 goes down to the wire. Mistakes made on both sides, big plays made on both sides. Was a pretty exciting primetime football game. Unfortunately for Wolfpack fans, not the result that NC State wanted. Ends up suffering the first ACC loss of the season. But, if you're looking at it from the NC State perspective, early on in that game, this game had every element of NC State stuff imaginable in the first quarter. And you already got the sense that if NC State could pull this off, I think I tweeted in the first quarter, if NC State can pull this game off, it's a special season. I'm not saying it still can't be a special season. We'll get to that a little bit later because I still think there's some talk to be had about the ACC Atlantic Division race. But let's talk about this game specifically first before we get into the big picture. NC State fought in this game, came back, took the lead at halftime, but ultimately just too many missed opportunities and costly mistakes in the second half to come away with the road victory. Matt, what are your initial impressions from this game? Are you more disappointed that NC State didn't find a way to win this game, or are you more, maybe glass half full that with the elements going on in the game, losing Isaiah Moore in the first half, everything that was going on, Miami, of course, came ready to play. This was not a typical 2-4 ACC opponent. That NC State fought back and really had a chance to win this game down the stretch. How are you kind of viewing this game now that you've had a night of sleep and a few hours here today on Sunday to kind of think about the game last night?
I mean, I kind of feel like every time we do a podcast, when they win, I'm the guy that tried to kind of calm it down a little bit and remind everybody last week that Boston College made a litany of errors to kind of open the door, and NC State did a good job at kind of taking advantage of that opportunity. And after a loss, I might be the guy that, as you said, glass half full, to just kind of remind people it's not like they just manhandled and abused out there, right? And you look at the list of mistakes that were made, and there's no reason calling, I know fans are going to focus on a drop pass here or an offside there. There's no reason really to single out a couple guys. There was a lot of errors made in that game. They were not picking up the running back out of the backfield on 4th and 1. To go and look at that play, and they got a good pass rush on that play. If somebody picks up the running back, Van Dyke is probably going to get hit. And conversion, and NC State takes over. Instead, it's a 53-yard touchdown. You had the 3rd and 16 pass where there was a clear miscommunication between the linebackers on who had the tight end. Apparent, I would say. You had a lot of, even Devin Leary, first drive of the second half. We talked about off air how three passes, one Ameji, one was too far in front of Devin Carter, and I think the other one was to Ameji where he just missed him or maybe Thayer Thomas. He just flat out missed him, and all three would have been first down catches. There were a lot of missed opportunities in that game, and despite all those missed opportunities, Let's say they made 15 missed opportunities. If they had just missed 12, right? It's still a bad day.
Right.
And they probably win the game, right? They probably win that game. It just shows you that this team is pretty good. There's talent on this team. Despite playing with a defense that was down 4 starters when you count the 3 that have been lost earlier in the season, and then losing Isaiah Moore in this game. Yeah, they came up with a big stop to set the offense up for potential game-winning drives. So, I'd say give my H. Williams credit. He probably hoping that Miami is better than people think. I didn't believe it. The more I studied it, as you listen to our preview podcast, the more I kept coming around to you cannot look at this team as a 2-4 team. They had Virginia beat. They had North Carolina, maybe not beat, but sorely on the ropes, prepared to take the knockout punch. Carolina was waiting for that knockout punch to happen, and they landed a lucky counter strike to win. Virginia was done. I mean, that's a field goal that can make 100 out of 100 times, and he hit it off the upright. And so, you had to look at this team as a team that should be 4-2, 2-0 in the ACC with a nice home win over Appalachian State, and the 2 losses to a pair of teams that one may be the second best team in the country in Alabama on a neutral field, and the other is a currently top 10 ranked Michigan State team. And so that was a good Miami team. NC State did everything possible to really put in a winning performance and still almost won. So it is a talented team, and they shouldn't give up. They shouldn't be down. Now, obviously, you're disappointed, but don't let one loss carry over into 2 losses and 3 losses, because you are good enough to still achieve your goal. Now, this team was probably not going to go to a college football playoff. I mean, that was a fantasy world possibility out there if you went out. So we can now just remove that from the table and not worry about it anymore, right? So let's just focus on being an ACC champion. And that's still very much in their grasp. We looked at ESPN FPI before this podcast started. They still have NC State favored in every single one of their games left. By 2-1 percentage-wise. All but one by 2-1 percentage-wise, basically. So focus on the positive, obviously, more to not be seriously hurt. But yeah, I mean, this was just, I put in my column, this wasn't a championship performance because they made so many mistakes. But don't lose sight of the fact that they almost still won the game. And that shows you it's a good team.
For the listeners at home that may have missed Matt Carter saying it because there was a little glitch in the connection there, he was commending me for,
I don't remember. There was a glitch in the connection?
I think it was when you were mentioning my name specifically, but you were giving me credit for saying that this Miami team is not a 2-4 team going into this game. I certainly, I don't think Miami is a top 20 caliber team by any means, right. Particularly without De'Aaron King, particularly without their star running back, Cameron Harris. I mean, look, NC State, starting to feel the injury bug a little bit more, but you know what? You can't really play that card in a game where the other team's missing its, star starting quarterback and its star running back and other valuable starters. I mean, everybody is suffering from the injury bug, so it does stink for Isaiah Moore, and it stinks for this defense that, he's such a big part of this defense. He left the game in the first half, but I wouldn't say it was the injuries that cost NC State this game. I will say that Miami certainly came out like a team that had a chip on its shoulder, a team that knew it was better than its 2-4 record, a team that was fighting for its head coach's life. Matt, you were talking about after wins, we kind of, you kind of like to bring everybody down a notch and kind of remind people of the context, and in a loss, you like to look at it glass half full, and I think that's an appropriate perspective for a lot of ACC games, because if you're on the Miami side of this, you're probably thinking it's a nice win, it's a good win over a quality opponent at home, but Manny Diaz really gave NC State some chances to get back in that game. I mean, you got to commend him for having the guts to throw it on 3rd and long there at the end on that last drive that really iced the game for Miami, but really other than that, Miami made some some critical errors, I thought, in terms of just their strategy that allowed NC State to make this a closer. If Miami had made some different choices, I think this may have been a little bit different than a 1-point game. It may have been an 8-point game at the end of the game. But, NC State, you just got to look at all the missed opportunities. I know everybody is kind of beating up on Devin Carter on Twitter, and I think inappropriately. I mean, yes, I'm with you in the sense that if you make these top 10 catches against Boston College, you literally catch a ball that bounces off a defender, you should probably catch the wide open crossing route, on 2nd and long to extend the drive that could end up winning the game. It's kind of like hitting a half-court shot in basketball but missing your layups. He's the first person that knows that. He gets that. He understands that. He's disappointed in himself, and he's certainly not the only one that lost this game. Corey Durden, 2 costly errors on offsides calls. That first one in the opening drive of the the second half, Miami. I mean, Matt, you talked about the big play that got Miami down into the red zone. Even when Miami was in the red zone, NC State forces a 4th and 5 in the Miami red zone. Miami's about to kick to tie up the game at 17. Corey Durden jumps off sides, gives Miami a freebie first down. Next play, they score a touchdown and take a 4-point lead. That's a 4-point error right there. Right there. In a 1-point game, that's a 4-point error. And you look at some things that were just unfortunate circumstances, just rotten luck with the Anthony Smith fumble recovery on the punt, which would have given NC State the ball inside the Miami 10 in the third quarter, given NC State an opportunity to take the lead there. Instead, Anthony Smith helmet comes off in the middle of the play, makes him an ineligible player. He's penalized, offsetting penalties. Replay 4th down, and NC State has to punt again. Of course, Miami catches it that time, and Miami retakes possession. That was a huge momentum swing there. If NC State was able to get that ball, you'd think NC State's able to score in the red zone there, find a way to get into the end zone, and really start to take control of the game. But it was just and that wasn't Devin Carter's only drop, by the way, on that last drive. He had a couple head scratchers in this game, but again, it wasn't even just those plays. You look at the run game. We talked about this going into this game, how NC State, their run game hadn't really been that impressive in a few games, and you were thinking, well, if there's a time for that NC State run offense to get going, this sure seems like a good time to start against a Miami defense that's really struggled against a few of its opponents early on in the season. I thought Miami's defense was pretty sharp. Saturday night, NC State still able to gain 421 yards, outgained Miami by a yard, by the way. Still puts up 30 points, but Miami really did a good job of shutting down NC State's run game. Just never really got going. 111 yards on 22 carries. I mean, statistically, that's somewhat efficient, but it just seemed like when the run plays were being called, it was like in weird times on 1st and 10, and it would be a 2-yard run to the left or a tackle for a loss to the left. You're setting up a 2nd and long situation where you got to pass on both downs, and it just seemed like the offense never really found a rhythm more times than it did. There were a couple moments there in the second half where you think this NC State offense is finding its rhythm, and then that crucial 4th down opportunity. NC State was near midfield. I think it was still in its own territory there in the 4th quarter. It felt like if they could have gotten that first down there, maybe they make something out of that drive. But it was just a collective loss. NC State played complementary football to win that Boston College game. Plays complementary football to win a lot of these games early on this season. I don't really know what the term is for the opposite of complementary football, but I think that would be the best way to explain NC State's performance on Saturday night. It was a okay performance, not NC State's best outing by any means. Still had an opportunity to win the game, but it was just too many head-scratching mistakes in various elements of the game that it ends up costing you on the road.
Yeah, I would, if we're on the part of Miami, maybe could have had an 8-point. I mean, I really think if you add up mistake versus mistake, the NC State list would have kept going a long time past the Miami list stopping.
Oh,
so,
no doubt. I'm just saying Manny Diaz on the hot seat, punting there, running up the middle at the end on Miami's second to last drive, gave NC State the ball back there in that fourth quarter.
Do that. I think you're talking about like on third down. I mean, they were what was it, third down?
It was third and
When
long. He
they
was being passive. He was giving NC State an opportunity to
yeah
come back and take the lead.
that's kind of where you're stuck with your. I mean, you know that they're going to bring pressure. Last thing you want to do is have your freshman quarterback throw an interception in the red zone, and you have one of the country's best punter, right? So you have to trust your punter to your All-American punter to do his job and flip the field. On the punt, he actually got off a pretty good punt, if I recall, too. It was like a 50-yard punt.
The punters were phenomenal in this game.
Yeah, they were. And even the fake punter were phenomenal.
Yeah, that was NC State's best offensive play of the game. Well, other than the long connection to Anthony Smith, that was pretty good too.
Yeah, the one that made you right before the half. I did, Manny Diaz calling the timeout with 20 seconds left. In the first half was dumb. I know you don't have your personnel on the field, but you have to recognize the situation. NC State's hurry and the odds that they're going to recognize their personnel as they get off a snap is slim to none. So don't worry about that, right? And in NC State, I don't know whose fault it was, but not having the right personnel on the field for a field goal in the second half and having to use that timeout was huge. Down the stretch, you needed that third timeout. And they ended up only having two. Those are the type of things that really, that kind of drives me crazy, particularly in the second half when you need your timeouts in the second half to use it for a personnel issue on a field goal too. That's disappointing. It was just funny again. Bottom line is NC State was good enough to beat, and it's not a bad Miami team. Throw out the record. I think you hit on something. I was unaware that apparently the Miami AD went out and made some comments about, they're evaluating Manny Diaz. I did know there were rumors that if Manny had lost the game, and I say Manny because I know him when he was an assistant coach at NC State, that if he had lost the game, he was out. Tweeted very early in the game, this is clearly a spirited Miami team that's playing like its season is on the line. We talked about it in the preview podcast.
Wasn't the 2001 team there? The Miami 2001 team was there.
The championship team was there. And they have 2 weeks to get their season right. NC State and Pittsburgh. They had to survive those 2 weeks. If they could win or split that up to go on a run to finish out the year. If they lose both of them, they're in jeopardy of having the season get away completely from them. And they played like that. They were flying. They were tackling, which has been the bugaboo for their defense. They could not tackle worth a lick. They had some missed tackles in this game, but it was much better, including on the 4th and 8 pass to Thayer Thomas. He catches it 6 yards out, has a one-on-one situation. He made a fantastic play. I think you could argue that route has to go to the sticks. And I don't know if that was a Thayer Thomas, or Devin Leary, or that was the play call. Whatever it was, you could make a valid point that has to go to the first down sticks rather than trying to make yards after the catch to get the first down. So, that'd be interesting to see how that was called. But, that was clearly a spirited Miami team. They were aggressive. They were flying, aggressive in the play calling, going for it on 4th and 1 at their own 43 in the second quarter. Or 47-yard line, I believe. In the second, getting the 53-yard touch. Deep bombs did Tyler Van Dyke take a shot at in that game. I mean, throwing it on 3rd and 16, knowing NC State's out of timeouts, but yes, throwing it and going for it. Other than that last drive, the second to last drive, they were pretty aggressive, I thought. They were aggressive on defense. And I go back to, it was a 1-point loss. And all you have to do is not jump offside, maybe make a catch here, make a more accurate throw here, not blow an assignment on defense here. Just do 1 or 2 of those, not all of them. NC State probably wins the game. And so that's my glass half full perspective. It just, let's not act like they just went out there and lost to South Florida or Furman, and let's not act like, they played a C- game and almost beat a Miami team that probably played a B game for them and nearly beat them at their place on the road. So, the thing to me would be the status of Isaiah Moore. They're going to need him to finish this out. I did think Devon Betty played pretty well in his absence, 2.5 tackles for loss. I think he's going to be a good linebacker for NC State. He's a second-year true freshman, if you will. But it's a beat-up team. I think going forward, if we're talking now, is how do you avoid letting one loss turn into two? And that has been a problem for NC State in the past. It's been a problem with Dave Doran teams in the past. Well, this heartening loss turns into others. You can go all the way back to the Gator Bowl team in 2003, I believe. 2002 maybe. Undefeated. Should have beaten Georgia Tech at home. Gave up a late touchdown drive to lose to Georgia Tech. And next thing you know, they had a 3-game losing streak. Can't that happen because you're good enough to still achieve an ACC title game appearance. And that's got to be such a huge focus because, look, Louisville is playing good football right now. I watched them beat Boston College. That's going to be a hard assignment for NC State. So you got to regroup quickly. You got to regroup real quick now.
Well, it's a great thing that it's at home for NC State because, I mean, we're looking at an NC State team that's now 1-2 on the road this season. I mean, look, the road win at Boston College was impressive, but, you know, we just saw Louisville take apart Boston College pretty easily this past week. We saw firsthand Boston College really isn't the same team without Phil Dracovic under center. You know, it's probably a middle-of-the-road, you know, average, mediocre ACC opponent now. And so, you know, now you're looking at a team that, you know, twice has had 2 of its worst performances of the season on the road. And in both instances, it was not that NC State didn't come out with energy. I thought NC State has done a good job of coming out with energy in every game. It's just that at Miami and at Mississippi State, both of those 2 teams seemed more desperate to win the game than NC State. NC State came out with energy, was motivated, but it's just a matter of desperation. Like, you could just tell the way Miami was swarming the ball on defense. You could tell by the way they were letting it loose on offense. They were playing like a team that had nothing to lose and was completely desperate to go out and win a ball game for their head coach. NC State, on the other hand, did play like a team that had something to lose, and, you know, it certainly has a point there. It has the makings of a special season, but this is not a game that's going to sink NC State's season. I think it's appropriate for us to go ahead and talk about the big picture. We've already hinted at it a little bit earlier on in this podcast, but, you know, the only thing this game changes for NC State is that you can go ahead and rip up your NC State to make the college football playoff future bet. That's the only thing that changes. Other than that, NC State still has complete control of its destiny of whether or not it makes the first ACC championship game in football in school history. So, you know, I know that means that, you know, technically NC State would have to win the last 5 games to truly control its own destiny to make the ACC championship game. But as we've already talked about, Matt, you know, if you look at the metrics, NC State on paper is favored in the rest of these games. I know that road game at Wake Forest is going to be tough, but, you know, guess what? If you win this game and you, like, it didn't change anything. Wake Forest is still a must-win as long as Wake Forest remains undefeated in ACC play. Because even if you were to win this game and NC State remains undefeated, well, somebody's got to leave that NC State-Wake Forest game with 1 loss. And guess what? If both teams have 1 loss, the tie goes to the team that won that game. So, you know, NC State is still plenty to play for, and I think there needs to be a quick reminder that, look, it's okay to be disappointed with a frustrating road loss against a team that was, you know, actually pretty good. I think when it's all said and done, we're going to look at this Miami team. I mean, who knows how they finish out the season, but at this point, this was a huge win for them in terms of getting to a bowl game and finishing out the year strong. Now they're going to go into that Pittsburgh game with a ton of confidence. If they can find a way to upset Pittsburgh, wouldn't it all surprise me to see Miami win out the rest of its schedule? But, you know, this NC State team has to be reminded, has plenty to play for. It's got to rebound quick. And I agree with you, Matt. That Louisville team is starting to look pretty impressive. And if you look at the rest of the schedule, other than that road game at Wake Forest, you know, this Louisville game, you really got to find a way to take care of business, survive this week, bounce back, get some confidence at home. Then you go to Florida State against a team that's, you should beat, but you really need to go into that game with some confidence and go onto the road and try to put together another Boston College performance, not another Mississippi State or Miami performance. So, again, we've harped on it enough. The best case scenario for NC State any given year is to go win the ACC championship. That's still within reach. I don't know why everyone's ready to rip it to shreds right now.
Yeah, like NC State opened up a touchdown favorite over Louisville. Louisville was set up well against Boston College, right? They had a bye week. UC had a deflating loss to NC State at home. If Louisville doesn't win that game, then they're just not destined for good things this year. So, they did what they needed to do in that game. Now let's see how they do on the road. Louisville, I think, is now 2-2 maybe in the ACC. I know they beat Florida State, and obviously they just beat Boston College. Conversely, they lost when they blew a lead. I mean, if you look at their two losses, they lost to, if you did an ACC power ranking, it just shows you how bad the ACC is, that Virginia may have a case to be the third best team right now in the power ranking. But, they had a big lead against Virginia in the second half and blew it. And the Wake Forest game was decided by, I think, 2 points. And Louisville had a very legitimate gripe with how Wake Forest got 3 points in that game. I think it had something to do with the timeout, where they granted Wake Forest a timeout maybe right before the half that was way too quick on the whistle to get the timeout. And it clock should have expired rather than have 1 second left. And in a 2-point game, that ended up proving to be a big difference. Certainly capable. They have probably the best quarterback that people aren't talking about in the ACC. So, right, you got to handle your business there, and sometimes schedule is about luck. Wake Forest has been very fortunate in so many ways. And one of them being when they played Florida State, when Florida State was totally in the dumps. And now Florida State's found a little something. They've won 3 in a row. They just crushed a bad Massachusetts team, but they've essentially had a 2-week bye. They had a bye, and then they played one of the worst FBS teams in the country, and they crushed them. So they've had 2 weeks to really work on a lot of stuff. And, I know everybody loved the Mackenzie Milton.
Yeah.
Had the court. I know everybody loved the story, but clearly Jordan Travis was the move at quarterback. They had it right to begin with. Everybody went with the Disney story, and it was a phenomenal story. You have to really admire Mackenzie Milton. I couldn't have done what he did. Obviously, I wouldn't have had a prayer to do what he did. But Jordan Travis, defensively, so that's going to be a tough game on the road. Syracuse is pesky. And then obviously Chapel Hill's a rivalry game. So as you look at all these games other than Wake Forest, it's going to be tough. But you're right, they do control their own destiny. Where this loss hurts is it cuts your margin for error down to nothing, because you really can you see Wake Forest losing that. And, they get Duke as one of their 2 crossovers in the ACC. Duke is the worst team in the ACC. They got Florida State at precisely the right time. They got Louisville at a good time. They got Virginia at precisely the right time. You got to remember, I think Virginia had just been crushed by UNC the week before. So they have been getting teams at precisely the right time. And now it looks like Boston College and Clemson are going in a wrong direction. So you almost have to look at it as for NC State. I kind of look at it, they realistically got to win out. Now, they can win every single game. But realistically, when you look at Wake's got Duke, NC State, Clemson, Boston is left. Which game do you think that Wake would be toughest for them? Probably NC State. So the loss.
Well, you got to win out to feel good, right? Like you're not. If you lose to somebody else other than Wake Forest the rest of the way, there's still an opportunity. But then you're counting on Clemson's offense to outscore Wake Forest, and
you got You got to look at Clemson too. I mean, I just saw where they lost like 3 more guys for the season, and then it truly turned into one of those years for them. And it just goes to show you that not even the Clemsons of the world can survive injuries, which NC State had in 2019. So let's just kind of wipe 2019 off Dave Doran's record. Just annihilate that. No team in the country can handle that kind of injuries. So yeah, Clemson's a shell of itself now with all these injuries, and yeah, their defense is great, and they did a decent enough job against Pittsburgh, but Wake Forest just put up 70 against Army, the ball for like 18 minutes in the game. So
Yeah.
that's nuts.
I mean, I know Army's defense was terrible in that game, but to put up 70 on anybody, I mean, even an FCS opponent, that's impressive. So,
I think they scored 10 touchdowns. I mean, they almost scored on a touchdown every time they touched the football. So
look, all I'm saying is if you're NC State, don't put yourself in a situation where you have to count on Clemson beating Wake Forest to get to the ACC title game. And you know what? That just means there's no more room for error. Got to take care of business the rest of the way, Yep. And you look at the 2 losses, 2 games that NC State was favored in by, I mean, basically the exact same spread, 3 points. So games that NC State had a slight advantage in, was expected to win, but not by much. I mean, a field goal is practically a pick 'em, especially in college football. So, and you're looking at 5 games the rest of the way. They're going to be pretty similar to that. They're going to be like NC State's a 7-point favorite against Louisville. If it comes out on Monday, I don't know anything about Isaiah Moore's injury status, so this is all speculation. If it came out on Monday that he's not going to be available against Louisville, I would expect that spread to drop, probably closer to 4, maybe more 4.5, 5 when it's all said and done. If he's available, I think it probably stays put at 7, but you really need Isaiah Moore back because clearly, this NC State defense was able to sustain the losses of Peyton Wilson and C.J. Clark and who's the third starter that's out for the season? Cyrus Fagan. I always get Cyrus Fagan and Derek Pitts mixed up because they were the 2 secondary transfers this past summer. Derek Pitts has been playing pretty doggone good. But yeah, they were able to sustain those 3 big defensive starting losses, and now you're looking at a team that's close to about half strength with the starters that came into the season with if you don't have Isaiah Moore. And you really need Isaiah Moore because not only just for his talent and ability on the field to make tackles, athletically, I'm sure you could probably, put Devon Betty pretty comparable in terms of Isaiah Moore's just pure athletic ability, but where you miss Isaiah Moore the most is his on-the-field presence and his ability to pick apart the offense, read what the offense is doing, bark orders on the field. I mean, he's the field general out there. He's the coach on the field. So if you don't have him, Drake Thomas takes on that role, and I'm sure he's good at it, but it's just not the same. And then you've got to switch around. Drake Thomas has to switch his position because you've got to put the reserve linebackers where they're more comfortable, and everything gets messed up. So, prayers up. Hopefully Isaiah Moore is good to go, but we'll see. Monday is going to be a very important day for NC State fans to be paying attention to the news. I know Matt Carter will be breaking it whenever we get an update, but be on the lookout for what Isaiah Moore's status is the rest of the way, because that is potentially, that is a huge injury status for NC State the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think that's a big development. Got to be positive that he went back into the game, which leads you to believe that they didn't see anything alarming. And then maybe it was just something he just couldn't quite play through.
Yeah.
At that point in the game, he took himself out. So, maybe it just kind of needs a week to rest and get over the pain. We'll see. And also, don't forget Chavala. I think they did miss him a little bit in the running game at left guard.
Yeah.
He missed the second straight game. It was a day-to-day proposition with him. So maybe, his return could be coming soon, and that would be another boost to the lineup. So, yeah, you want to give out some game balls?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll give mine first because
okay.
I doubt you'll pick the same guy, but I don't know. I'll just go ahead and give it to Trenton Gill because Look, I'm not trying to be funny with this pick, but Trenton Gill had a really great game. You got to look in a game where you miss a lot of opportunities. You don't put your best effort together. Field position is key, and thank Trenton Gill for allowing NC State to have an opportunity to win this game down the stretch. 6 punts, averaged 49.2 yards per punt, inside the 20-yard line 3 times. 3 of his 6 punts were over 50 yards. I mean, he basically flipped the field every time he had to come on the field. So, Trenton Gill, he's my guy. All ACC caliber punter, and you know what? People laugh about special teams, but that can win and lose games, as NC State fans unfortunately know. So, shout out Trenton Gill. He gets my game ball.
I'm going to give it to Drake Thomas, linebacker, led team in tackles. I think he had 9 tackles, had 2 sacks. I thought he may have had his best game for the Wolfpack, and he was really running around the field well. So I'm going to give it to Drake Thomas. He's had a lot of good games this year. I thought this may have been his best. So he gets my game ball.
I don't know who the tweet was from, but I saw a tweet that was like, NC State fans owe the world to the Thomas family. And it's like, it's true. It's true. It's true, man. Thayer Thomas, Drake Thomas, week in, week out.
They had a couple touchdown catches. There were a lot of good performances, by the way, in this game. I mean, look, Devin Lee, for the most part, played really well.
Yeah.
McAmeeby made some big catches. Thayer Thomas made some big catches. Ricky Person had a couple of nice, really big runs. Chris Dunn made all his field goals after the one that he missed was taken away by running into the kicker.
With a bad back, maybe, too.
Yeah. I thought Davin Van did some good plays on the defensive line. Yeah, there were some good performances. There were just too many necessary mistakes, mental lapses type. It wasn't getting beat. It was mental lapses, and that's the hard part. You can be almost better if you can take getting beat and you just say you're just not as good at them. But when you look at the big plays Miami had, a lot of times you can say, well, if they pick up the running back out of the backfield, or if you don't let the tight end flip between 2 linebackers, that's not getting beat. That's just mental lapses. And that's the disappointing aspect of it. But there is the aspect of, it's not like Miami was that much better or anything like that than NC State. Maybe that's frustrating that you let one get away in that manner, but go back to what you and I talked about. This is better than Miami last year was not as good as their record indicated. This year they're not as bad as it indicates.
Yeah, similar games last year. A similar game last year too. I mean, just back and forth. I mean, we said it going into this game. If Miami's gonna win, it's got to be a shootout, and it was kind of. I mean, 31-30. It hit the over definitely hit. That's for sure. So, well, anyways, tune back in this week. We'll preview the upcoming Louisville game. That's going to be a homecoming game. I'm sure Carter Finley Stadium will be packed, and hopefully the Wolfpack faithful show out in numbers. For NC State, going to need the home field advantage against the tough ACC opponent in Louisville next week in a very, very important game now. Look, NC State in this ACC title game, every game was important. This game was important, but now every game is that much more important because there's just no more room for error. So we'll see how the NC State Wolfpack can respond next week. Listeners and viewers at home, please remember to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast wherever you listen to us. Apple, Spotify, Google Play, we're there, you name it. Go to our YouTube channel, the Wolfpacker YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give this video a thumbs up. Drop a comment while you're at it. Follow us on social media. You can follow our main account at the Wolfpacker on Twitter. You can follow me personally at Justin H. Will on Twitter. And give us a like on Facebook, NC State Wolfpack on thewolfpacker.com. So for Matt Carter, this is Justin Williams, and this has been the Wolfpacker Podcast.